Good morning. This is Pastor Jeff, and this is our daily lectionary readings for Tuesday, July 26, 2022. We have our three readings. Once again, we have the same psalm reading, so it will be Psalm 55, 16 through 23. We're continuing in the book of Esther, hearing her story. Esther 6, 1 through 7, 6 is going to be the Old Testament reading. And then Romans 9:30 through chapter 10, verse 4 is going to be our New Testament reading. Let us listen in today. Psalm 55. I call to God. God will help me. At dusk, dawn, and noon, I sigh, deep sighs. He hears, he rescues. My life is well and whole, secure in the middle of danger. Even while thousands are lined up against me, God hears it all, and from his judge's bench puts them in their place. But set in their ways, they won't change. They pay him no mind. And this, my best friend, betrayed his best friends. His life betrayed his word. All my life, I've been charmed by his speech, never dreaming he'd turn on me. His words, which were music to my ears, turned to daggers in my heart. Pile your troubles on God's shoulders. He'll carry your load. He'll help you out. He'll never let good people topple into ruin. But you, God, will throw the others into a muddy bog. Cut the lifespans of assassins and traitors in half. And I trust in you. Our Old Testament reading comes from the book of Esther, chapter 6, verse 1, and it carries on through chapter 7, verse 6. Let us listen in to the story. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He ordered the record book, the day-by-day journal of events, to be brought and read to him. They came across the story there about the time that Mordecai had exposed the plot of Bigthana and Teresh, the two royal eunuchs who guarded the entrance and who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. The king asked, what great honor was given to Mordecai for this? Nothing, replied the king's servants who were in attendance. Nothing has been done for him. The king said, is there anybody out in the court? Now, Haman had just come into the outer court of the king's palace to talk to the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows he had built for him. The king's servant said, Haman is out there waiting in the court. Bring him in, said the king. When Haman entered, the king said, what would be appropriate for the man the king especially wants to honor? Haman thought to himself, he must be talking about honoring me. Who else? So he answered the king, for the man the king delights to honor, do this. Bring a royal robe that the king has worn, and a horse that the king has ridden, one with a royal crown on its head. Then give the robe and the horse to one of the king's most notable princes. Have him robe the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Have the prince lead him on horseback throughout the city square, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Go and do it, the king said to Haman. Don't waste another minute. Take the robe and horse and do what you have proposed to Mordecai, the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Don't leave out a single detail of your plan. So Haman took the robe and the horse, and he robed Mordecai and led him through the city square, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman fled to his house, thoroughly mortified, hiding his face. When Haman had finished telling his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him, his knowledgeable friends who were there and his wife Zeresh said, if this Mordecai is in fact a Jew, your bad luck has only begun. You don't stand a chance against him. You're as good as ruin." While they were still talking, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman off to dinner that Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman went to dinner with Queen Esther. At the second dinner, while they were drinking wine, the king asked, "Queen Esther, what would you like? Half of my kingdom? Just ask, and it's yours." Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it pleases the king, give me my life and give my people their lives. We've been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, sold to be massacred, eliminated. If we had just been sold off into slavery, I wouldn't have even brought it up. Our troubles wouldn't have been worth bothering the king over." King Xerxes exploded. "Who? Where is he? This is monstrous! An enemy, an adversary, this evil—" "Haman," said Esther. Haman was terror-stricken before the king and the queen. And here ends our readings for the day. Oh, no, it is not. I forgot. I got to do the New Testament. I apologize. That just ended the Old Testament reading. Our New Testament reading comes from the book of Romans, chapter 9, verse 30. And then it carries us on to chapter 10, verse 10. Who in the world do you think you are to second guess God? Do you, for one moment, suppose any of us know enough to call God into question? Clay doesn't talk back to its fingers that mold it, saying, "Why did you shape me like this?" Isn't it obvious that a potter has a perfect right to shape one lump of clay into a vase for holding flowers and another into a cooking pot for cooking beans? If God needs one style of pottery, especially designed to show his anger, displeasure, and another style carefully crafted to show his glorious goodness, isn't that all right? Either or both happens to be Jews, but also happens to the other people. Hosea put it well. I'll call nobodies and make them somebodies. I'll call the unloved and make them beloved. In the place where they are yelled out, "You're nobody," they're calling you God's living children. Isaiah maintained the same emphasis. If each grain of sand on the seashore were numbered and the sum labeled chosen of God, they'll be numbered still, not names. Salvation comes by personal selection. God doesn't count us, he calls us by name. Arithmetic is not his focus. Isaiah had looked ahead and spoken the truth. If our powerful God has not provided us with the legacy of living children, we would have ended up like ghost towns, like Sodom and Gomorrah. How can we sum this up? All these people who didn't seem interested in what God was actually doing embraced what God was doing as he straightened out their lives. And Israel, who seemed so interested in reading and talking about what God was doing, missed it. How did they miss it? Because instead of trusting God, they took over. They were absorbed in what they themselves were doing. They were so absorbed in God's projects that they didn't notice God right in front of them, like a huge rock in the middle of the road. And so they stumbled into him and went sprawling. Isaiah, again, gives us the metaphor for pulling this together. Careful. I've put a huge stone on the road to Mount Zion, a stone that you can't get around. But the stone is me. If you're looking for me, you'll find me on the way, not in the way. Believe me, friends, all I want for Israel is what's best for Israel. Salvation, nothing less. I want it with all my heart and pray to God for it all the time. I readily admit that the Jews are impressively energetic regarding God, but they are doing exactly everything backward. They don't seem to realize that this comprehensive, setting things right, that salvation is God's business, and a most flourishing business it is. Right across the street, they set up their own salvation shops and noisily peddle their knockoffs. After all these years of refusing to really deal with God on His terms, insisting instead of making their own deals, they have nothing to show for it. The early revelation was intended simply to get us ready for the Messiah, who then puts everything right for those who trust Him to do it. Moses wrote that anyone who insists on using the law code to live right before God soon discovers it's not so easy. Every detail of life regulated by fine print. But trusting God to shape the right living in us, it's a different story. No precautions climb up to heaven to recruit the Messiah. No dangerous descents into hell to rescue the Messiah. So what exactly was Moses saying? The word that saves is right here, as near as the tongue in your mouth, as close as the heart in your chest. It's the word of faith that welcomes God to go to work and set things right for us. This is the core of our preaching. Say the welcoming word to God. Jesus is my master, embracing body and soul. God's work of doing in us what He did in raising Jesus from the dead. That's it. You're not doing anything. You're simply calling out to God, trusting Him to do it for you. That's salvation. With your whole being, you embrace God. Settle things right. And then you say it right out loud. God has set everything right between Him and me. And here ends our readings for the day. For real this time.